I hadn't expected to run into David at the gathering. I told him I was meeting friends for something casual, a night out that didn't involve him. Honestly, I assumed he wouldn't care. When I arrived, the room was alive with music and dim lights, the kind of atmosphere that made attention feel addictive. I laughed easily, let conversations flow, and allowed myself to feel noticed again. There was someone there, James, who made me feel magnetic, alive, desirable. I flirted openly, thinking I controlled the moment, controlled my marriage, controlled him. Then, in the middle of my laughter, something changed. I turned slightly and saw David across the room. He was quiet, still, and watching. There was no confrontation, no anger, not even a flicker of disapproval. That calmness unsettled me far more than rage ever could. My confidence wavered, replaced by an unfamiliar, creeping anxiety. I had expected him to intervene, to pull me aside, to demand answers in a way I could handle. Instead, he remained where he was, silent and observant, as if watching a play that no longer belonged to him. I tried to ignore him, force myself to continue the conversation, but my laughter now sounded hollow, every gesture exaggerated. I kept waiting for him to step forward, to reclaim his place. He didn't. The tension grew heavy, pressing down without release. James noticed my distraction and asked if I was okay. I smiled and nodded, but my eyes kept finding David. He wasn't pleading, arguing, or even showing disappointment. And that terrified me. Silence doesn't always mean patience. Sometimes it means decision. Eventually, I lost sight of him. He left the room as quietly as he had entered, no words, no confrontation. I told myself it didn't matter, that I still had control. I stayed longer than necessary, trying to savor the evening, but the thrill had vanished. By the time I got home, the house was dark and foreign. His shoes weren't by the door, his jacket wasn't on the chair. At first, I assumed he had stepped out for a walk, cooling off. But the stillness was too deliberate. My phone showed no messages, no calls. The confidence I had carried all evening shattered. For the first time, it occurred to me that his silence wasn't a reaction. It was a conclusion. I had underestimated what someone can do when they stop fighting for you. The next morning confirmed it. His side of the closet was empty. Drawers I'd never imagined opening alone were bare. On the kitchen table, an envelope with my name. Inside wasn't a note filled with anger or accusation. It was calm, concise, final. He wrote that he had seen enough to know what he no longer wanted. He wished me well, hoped I would find what I sought, and made it clear he was done searching alongside me. No pleas, no insults, just clarity. My hands trembled as I read it again and again, searching for some hidden emotion. There was none. That's when panic set in. I had believed power came from being desired by others. I hadn't realized true strength comes from knowing when to walk away, and he had done it silently. I tried calling, texting, hoping for an explanation. Nothing. Friends were puzzled at the sudden change, some asking about the party. I couldn't tell the truth. I told myself it was a misunderstanding, that he would come back. But deep down I knew better. This wasn't contemplation, it was acceptance. The worst part wasn't losing him. It was realizing he had already let go. I replayed the night in my mind. The laughter, the flirting, the false confidence I wore like armor. I had assumed being wanted gave me leverage. I didn't see that respect is what keeps someone by your side, and once lost, it doesn't return simply because you ask. Days passed, and the house felt heavier with every hour. His absence wasn't loud, it was absolute. I began noticing the subtle ways he had been signaling his unhappiness long before that night. The conversations I ignored, the worries I dismissed, the quiet moments when words failed him. I had mistaken patience for weakness, loyalty for permanence. The illusion shattered completely. I wasn't being punished. I was being left behind by someone who finally chose himself. The realization hurt more than anger ever could. I wanted to explain, to justify, to say I never intended to lose him, but intentions don't undo the damage. Watching him stand there silently while I flirted was a message I had finally received, and by the time I understood, He had already spoken the only language that mattered: action. Friends encouraged me to call, apologize, fight for my marriage. But fighting requires two people willing to stay in the ring. He had already stepped out. His silence wasn't cruelty, it was self-respect. I had taught him how replaceable he was by assuming he would always stay. That night didn't end my marriage. It revealed how quietly it had been ending all along. I learned something painful but essential. Control isn't about attention. It's about integrity. I had attention everywhere, but I lacked integrity. And integrity is what he chose over me. That understanding reshaped my view of love, power, and the cost of taking someone for granted. I never imagined his silence could change my life so completely. I expected anger, confrontation, perhaps even eventual forgiveness. What I didn't expect was dignity. When he quietly watched me as though invisible, I thought I was winning. In truth, that was the moment I lost everything. His silence wasn't weakness. It was the sound of a door closing softly, forever. I discovered too late that love isn't measured by freedom taken, but by care given when no one is watching. That night changed everything, not because of what I did, but because of what he did next. And that consequence will remain with me forever.